Okay, now it's not yet working. Now, hello everyone. Let me know if you can hear me well, okay, and see me well. Can you hear and see? Okay. Let me see who is in the chat today. And we will start working shortly. Again, this will not going to be a very long session because unfortunately at this time I don't have time. Basically, right now this is a really like busy period for our company, and that's why I don't have too much time to spend on these things, but still it is very important that we go through them so that later you would be able to carry on with projects like these and improve also your own research and tasks and other things. So I see I got Evert, so that's great. That's great. So I hope everything is set up. So you should get your template. So the template is basically the code from previous time, and the way how you should do is that you need to open as your root folder the actual session for today, not the like kind of, you know, folder where you have all of the sessions. Otherwise it will not work that nicely. Basically it works much better in PyCharm, which is the environment which we will use, if you open the folder with all of these things by itself. So just to double check, basically what we can do is we can press this bug button and run the main code, right? So, and the main code is giving us the link which we can open. And if we open that link, right, then we should see something like, not like this, let me see. We should see something like this, right? Hello world. And of course, if we created I will go over that, but we created posts/new, and it opens this not very design award-worthy form, right? Where we can create post, hopefully. Now it's not creating post, by the way. So let me go back to the code here. So far so good, hopefully. Then also you can double click on this database and then it will open it on sidebar. If it's not opening in your sidebar, it probably means that you're missing the plugin, which is called Database Explorer, or I think it was Database Navigator or Database Explorer. So you can add it. Let me show you how. Where is my full screen? Okay, so to add that thing, you should go here and find plugins. Or add, oh no, not here, but in settings, preferences, plugins, and here should be database tools, right? Database tools and SQL, right? So this one, I guess, and it gives you this nice panel on the side where you can edit and browse your database. Okay, so we created also last time the posts table with a few fields. I think we did not create all of the fields, which should be like this. So let's start by adding a few extra fields which are missing here. So let me see. So to do this, share again the full screen. We create here a new columns, like that. And one is that we could reorder the columns, but the order of the columns is not actually that important. It's of course much nicer looking. So especially for for SQLite, you could reorder, like in some other databases like Postgres. They are fixed, and if you create the order, you just can add things or remove things. So here will be another one, URL slug, which will be this this kind of like small link that you can use to open post without ID, right? So if I have slash some kind of like my trip to, I don't know, like to Estonia, then it will open just that post without the ID itself. So, and this will be URL slug, and here the data type will be variable character, so varchar. Again, just to remind you, if I use char, it means that this is a fixed array, like C type of array, where there will be empty letters at the end. But if I use varchar, this is a dynamic array. It stores also the length of that string. Of course, it also reserves the memory. So here, the URL slug, this will be 128. By default, this will be basically null. If it's not null, then it will be error. But let's leave it as that. Then let's add the next one, which is thumbnail. UID. This will be unique ID for thumbnail. Again, sometimes for systems like these, this will be 256. So systems like these, people like to add all sorts of unique identifiers instead of using just integer IDs, because if you have integer IDs, then you can easily attack the system. You can calculate what will be the next or previous post or the image, and you can request server a lot of things, or maybe analyze what is in the server just using those IDs. But if you have unique identifiers, then it's much harder to understand from the client's perspective what's happening in the server. So often you would hide all sorts of things like that. So that is that. And then the status. Again, this could be done with relational database with status ID. But for this particular example, let's use just as a string. So varchar, let's add it also 128. And by default, okay, let's leave it as null. Okay, so now we have all of the same columns as in the model, right? So they match now. So that is what we need. So I will drop this to the Jamboard. Again, just to remind you what will be the tasks for today. Of course, we don't have like huge amount of time, so we'll try to do as best as we can. So first task is now to make sure that your database table matches the actual data class record, right? So that's number one. Then afterwards, we will make sure that we can add actually to the database those posts. Let me quickly copy stuff from the last time. What was the objectives so far? There will be more objectives, of course. So raw HTML forms, I think we looked at this a little bit already. So this is okay, so this is kind of done. So of course we will look more at the HTML forms. There is a lot of things which we have not yet looked. So make the raw CSS usable, right? So handling posts, that is something we are also looked at, but we will keep looking at that, no worries. So then storing in the database and then visualizing the data, right? So this should be done today. Okay, so make sure that you have the database table set up. So that is one. Then if we go and look at what we had in our controllers, so one controller was created using this Flask blueprint posts and the URL prefix posts. So, and it's mapped to the blueprint root new and then to the view root. And this new root accepts the post and get type of request, right? So the get type of request is just rendering the HTML form using some variables, which we actually don't have here. And post is receiving that form in this old HTML type of format which is very commonly used with all sorts of tasks. So we then get all of our values, we strip them, I mean, like we remove the empty spaces, and then we try to insert the post, and then follows this line, which is extremely important. So this is this is called sometimes post back or redirect after the post. So if I don't have that line where I redirect user to some other website, so some other web URL, in this case this URL is the actual looking at the post, so this is basically the same. So this line will generate redirect to the posts view, and with this post ID, I don't know, like 1 or 2 or something like that. So this will be the link where it's redirected. If we don't have that redirect, then user can just refresh a page and it will automatically create another post. Every time the user refresh pages, there will be like hundreds of posts unintentionally created if you don't have after the post the get. So this is very common thing which should be always remembered. After every post comes get request, basically the redirect. So in between there is a redirect, get, so the post, get, redirect, get. So it starts actually by get, right? So you get a form, you fill the form, you post the form, you redirect back either to the same link. By the way, we could redirect back to the same link with this new information, right? Or we could redirect to another link. So, but that flow of information is very common and often used in the like all sorts of web systems. So that is that. So then we are now turning on to the adding stuff to the database, right? So we will use the library which is built into the Python SQLite, and we will definitely use the named variables syntax, because in the Lite SQL you can, and all sorts of SQLs actually, you can use many types of syntaxes, but not all of the syntaxes are good syntaxes. I will show you briefly, step by step, why and what is important here. Just a second. Let me quickly pull up some of my notes, and then we will continue. So we are receiving the post, and then we are getting back the post ID here in this return parameter. Again, reminding that in Python, these typings with the colons, this is optional, right? The same function will work great also like this, but if I write it like this, then I have more in danger of writing something wrong in my code. Of course, this is still not like a C sharp or something like that, where it tries to compile the code, but at least it is a little bit more safer, right? So that is that. Let me, actually I lost my notes, just a second. Okay, I found it, just a second. There, again, as I said, there is different ways to writing the syntax, and I wanted to give you one way which I would prefer writing these kind of syntaxes for SQLite. Okay, I found it. Now only some kind of stuff. Okay, so cool. Right. Okay. Okay, so let's create then here another function which will be used only inside this controller. So this will be again static function, static method, def. So this will be a connection. By the way, again, you could use something like this, connection. So with the two underscores, it makes functions private in Python, and with 1 underscore it makes functions protected. Of course, again, this is not strongly enforced. If I would like to not use the kind of, okay, I didn't know what happened. If I would not use the PyCharm, this environment, which checks some of those types, I could also run it directly in Python without checking the private or protected values, but that is definitely not something which should be encouraged to do. Okay, so this will be the connection string, connection object. So this will return SQLite 3 connect, and here in this connect it says, so if I go here, database, and database should be the path to the database, and in our case this is blog SQLite. The only question is, I think it will just run from the root, because the original script is from the root, I hope. If not, we can manage that. We can just select from the actual directory of the Python file. So connect SQLite, so that is good. Okay, that is good. Now let's try to insert the first post in our database. Again, one thing should be always done with all sorts of web systems and general systems would be also good to always have the try-catch statements, and also have the functions which always have the one input and one output position. So what I mean by that is following. So if I have the post ID, which should be returned, right? And I will return it here. Please do not create any other return statements within your code. Of course, if you would write in assembly language, right, in assembler, you will have a lot of return statements in between your functions, right? If this is an object-oriented programming language, you do not need to create a lot of return functions, and it makes the code much more unstable. So try pass. So this is the pass keyword is just placeholder, right? So then accept exception as exception something. Later, of course, would be nice to actually log those exceptions into file. What about closing the connection? Yeah, I will show you that just in a second. That's a good question in the chat about closing the connection. We will look at that in a second. So print exception. By the way, Python is really nasty because the print exception will not give you all of the details of exception. There is not really nice way, as far as I know, to get the stack trace out of the Python without using all sorts of hacks. So that is that. Then here regarding the actual connection, I'm just thinking that the current structure maybe is not as optimal as I wanted, but I don't like. Okay, I have a better idea. So let's first use this current structure, then let's rewrite the same code a little bit more manageable. So with the current structure, we can use with statement with this function which you just created. So self connection as connection, like that. And okay, I hope this works, or not like that, but like that. Right. So the with statement is actually there is the two overridden functions of an object, which is enter and exit, and we'll definitely create our own connection handler just in a moment, because this one I will not like the way how the structure will look like. But let's start simple. Let's start making first version and then trying to make it cleaner. So again, just to understand what this with keyword means, is that if I go inside here and try to look what was the actual object of connect, unfortunately it's not, there is no information. Here there is an information. Yes, nice. So the actual object is connection, and this object have these overridden operators, so the enter operator and exit operator. So the enter operator gets called when you enter the with statement, and exit operator that's called when you exit the with statement. That's why the with works. So this is making sure that the connection is closed, basically. So that is one thing. So let's then try to make the actual stuff here. So then the next thing is cursor, connection cursor, like that. Again, the cursors are basically the way how to handle transactions. If you have multiple inserts, for example, if I want to insert the post and I also want to insert all sorts of other related data, right? Like at the same time, for example, if I don't have some tags in my database, I add in different table tags, and if I have multiple insert statements, I can put them all inside this one cursor and then execute all of them at once. So basically, not, of course, they will not execute all of it at once, but they will be kind of a group. And if this group fails, I can reverse that same group. So this is called transactions, basically. It's in some other databases, it's transactions. Transactions. Right, so that is that. And then actually, let's start getting data. So not the getting data, but inserting data. So cursor execute something. Right, let's execute something here. And let's start simple. So first simple way how to add stuff is using the insert command, right? So if you don't know the commands for the SQL, you can look up them, but we will go over them slowly as well. So the insert, right? Insert into the, what was our database? Insert into the posts, and here the structure will be that we'll need to pass what are, okay, it's interesting that it automatically did not find the posts. Often this kind of stuff automatically gives these nice, you know, like autocompletes, but unfortunately now it did not recognize it, but that's no worries. So we will add, initially let's add only body and title, right? Body, title, yes. And so these are those inputs, and then follows the values, and then again there is the array of values which should be added. There might be a temptation now to enter something like this, so I will show you very wrong code. So definitely do not make anything like this. So if I create this in F string, and then if I create here like something like this, post body, and then, by the way, if I can also press enter and it will create a new line like that, right? Like this. This code should work, but this code is very dangerous because, of course, in the body or title, I could inject semicolon, right? At the end of any SQL statement is semicolon, and then I can inject all sorts of SQL attacks. So this code is dangerous SQL attacks possible. So never try to write anything like this where you try to insert something directly into the SQL code from like variables, right? Instead, you need to use some tools which tries to sanitize and make sure that the inputs are not something which would endanger the database, right? So in that case, we used name parameters, which in the Lite SQL is written like this. In other databases, the syntax a little bit changes, but the syntax do not change a lot, only a little bit. So let me basically, I actually will copy this part of the code and drop it to the Jamboard and say that do not do this. So do not write code like this. So I'm adding this to the Jamboard, and then I will show you another way, which should be a lot safer way. So instead, let's use something which is called named parameters. I think it's the same term used also for other database systems. So these are then named parameters. Of course, there is another way. You could add not named parameters, but just parameters like in string like syntax, like 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. That is again not good at all, because if you start using that other syntax with the 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, I think the original syntax was something like this, right? So I'm adding 1, adding 2, and then I'm passing in as a second field here. So there will be either a tuple, right, with those parameters or something like that. So in this way, it seems again nice way to write, but again very easy to break code. Like if at any moment something changes in your database structure, it's not easy to refactor if you start using these automatic numbers. So instead, always much smarter, much better is, instead of using this, using the named parameters. So named parameters. And for named parameters, we then use dictionary, right? So one way how to do this would be just to use like basic Python dictionary like that, right? Post body, right? So the basic Python dictionary, or another way is that if I have the object here, I can easily extract dictionary from object itself. So that is dot, 2 underscores, dict, and Python offers to extract dictionaries from objects. And this object, of course, contains post.body and post.title. That's why this code works. Title, right? So far so good, hopefully. So we have this thing happening. Okay, so then regarding the committing the transaction, so I think it automatically also commits transaction, but just in case we can have commit here, and then at the end cursor close, which I think we don't need actually those. I will just comment them. So for example, if you have multiple requests, which I mean like multiple inserts or updates, and then you need to get immediately some value out of your database, then in those cases usually you use something like this, but in other cases you don't use that. So far so good. Let's see if it works actually. By the way, post ID is still 0 now. So if I add breakpoint here, I run the code. Again, the debug main, of course, not this, but main, right? So maybe I will add the breakpoint here as well. And now if I go to my web form, which we have already in the template, right? So in my web form, where is it? We'll enter something and press enter. So now we got here. Good news is that the database is found, I think. Now the next line, so we got inserted something, hopefully. So if I now look at the posts here, double click on the posts, you see the new content appeared in the database. And those fields which I did not add was null now. Now the problem is that I still don't know what is my post ID. There are different ways how to get those post IDs out of that transactions. So for different databases, like for LightSQL, it's not as nice as for other databases, but basically there are different ways how to do that. So for LightSQL, to get the last inserted record, that is also why we would use the cursor, because cursor then provides the context, what was the last thing which was added. So we can write here post ID equals cursor execute, and then here select. By the way, I think there was also another function. Let me check after this one. So like last row ID. So this is that, and then here will be fetch 1, and then the first value, which is the 0 value. Let's see if it works. I run it again. Submitting, and post ID is equals 2. So this works. Okay, so this is one version. I will let you to catch up with this. By the way, let me just delete things which are not that important. Like that. So this is inserting post, very basic code. Adding this to the Jamboard, slide number 2, and asking in the chat, is insert post working? Plus minus, if you have any errors, let me know. Meanwhile, I will look if there is an easier way for LightSQL to get the last record. Yeah, it seems like that the LightSQL do not provide much nicer ways how to, as far as I know, to extract the last inserted record. If we would use different databases, by the way, there are different databases, you know, like MySQL, like PostgreSQL, like Oracle, like Microsoft SQL. So there are a lot of other databases which do have option to get the last inserted record without using select, but the LightSQL does require this. So I see IGA has done this, so that's good. Let's wait for somebody else to catch up as well, and then let's create the get function to get out the data from the database, right? Maybe we could already start writing it because we don't have a huge amount of time. So to get the data would be then def get post. Ever, it's also done, great. And this will be static. By the way, if you have any questions regarding all sorts of those small comments which I make while coding, then definitely ask those. So here the post ID, this will be then the integer, and we will return the model post object, right? Like that. Of course, this part of the code might be a little bit automated, you know, like to create which are the column names and which are the name parameters. Always there is a trade-off, you know. Be very careful to automate everything. If you just create like some super generic insert function or super generic select function, if it's too generic, then the code becomes unreadable and very dangerous, because it's very easy to break something which is not readable. So definitely try to, if possible, try to make code longer and with more kind of expressive things, rather than trying make it too generic. So here the get post. What I mean by too generic is, if I have insert post, I could reuse the same function for insert tags and so on, but please do not do this. As soon as there is some changes in databases, it just will create a lot of mess. So this is this. Get post will be the following. So result, or maybe we can call it post, just post, model post. This will be just an empty object, or we could maybe even return none, like that, right? So by default none, and then copy this part of the code, and if so that part, and then here we will change some things. So cursor execute, right? So this is that part. Then we will need to have something like result here, or rows, or query. Let's call it query. Cursor execute, right? And this will hold some temporary data here. And then the next is select function. So the select function, or the command, is also very commonly used in any SQL task. So select from. So this star means select everything from that table, and then the next one is the table name, and then the next one is the condition. Of course, there is also the ordering, grouping, all sorts of other things you can do. So post ID, and here again would be tempting to just insert in the string the post ID, which should not be done. Instead, just to make sure that this is safe, let's use the name parameter. And again here, because there is no post, there is just post ID, we need to pass it as dictionary key here, like that. If by any chance the function just use one parameter or maybe two parameters, you could use that syntax with numbers, but of course, as soon like later when you need to change something, it's always safer to use name parameters instead of numbers. So that is that. So we then try to get data from this stuff. So this is query. So then rows. By the way, we could just not rows, but let's just row query fetch one. We could fetch all. There are two functions, fetch one, fetch all. By the way, if I'm just selecting one item, then at the end I could add here limit one, which means that please do not waste resources in database by looking another post with same ID if you find already one. If you find first one, then stop executing resources in the database. So that is very also useful thing to add, the limits, the indexes, and all sorts of things like that. So now fetch one value here. Also, I think there is an option to have row count. Yes, so this is very important. If row count, by the way, if I would try to fetch without checking row count, probably this will result in error. So that is that. So these are these parts, but then there is another thing regarding the column names. So now everything will be just stored as in that row. If I add actually here a breakpoint, maybe we could try to use this. So the easiest way to debug it would be just adding here the call get post ID. Later we will use, of course, that in the other function. But just adding here a call after the inserting will let us debug this function. So now if I run the debugger, and then I will use the same exact form pressing F5. Again, the interesting thing is that every time when you press that F5, of course, that results in new posts, right? So posts, new, adding something. Okay, so I got till this part. Let me see if there is no bug again. So this part, by the way, I'm creating a new connection here, which is not good. Okay, let me run it again. Running it till this part. Okay, so far so good. Row count -1. Let me see, maybe it actually works after fetching. By the way, here in the Python there is a very nice way that I can write it like that. Fetch 1, which did not respond with anything. That's interesting. Debugger console, right. Not what I expected. Okay, row. There's something strange happening here. Just a second. Let me just print out the row. Probably my debugger starting acting out, or maybe there's an actually exception there. Post ID, post, it seems to be right. Okay. Okay, so this is restarting. I will try to submit again. Posts new something. This one is working. This one is working. So far, so good. Row. Okay, so now this is a tuple with all of the values without the columns itself. And if I would like to have the columns, maybe, okay, why this, okay. Unfortunately, that thing is not working fine, but that's no problem. We can look at here as well. I wanted to look at the values. So here's the description. Description means the column names, which is very nice, handy tool here. So description, here are all of the column names as a first value here. So if I write query.description, let's create this, and then I want to select out IT0 for IT in description. I hope this code works. It's not wanting to add to the... Okay, something regarding my debugger is a little bit laggy, but no worries. So, okay, we'll show you. So now if this row contains all of my column values without the column names, and this is not very useful to understand what is what in the values, right? So that's why we could have the call names, or call names, which will come from the IT0 for IT. So this is a common syntax for Python, that you can have lists created from another list. This is a map function basically. If you look at the iter tools map function, that is the same as what I'm doing now. So description, I'm going through all of those items and creating the column names. So that's great. So then I have column names and I have rows, and then I want them to be connected. So that would be then names by rows, oh sorry, these are not actually, so this will be just one column. So call, names by call. This we can use zip, use this one and this one. So it will create pairs. So every single line will be paired with another line in another list. So if I look at what is inside there, try to debug it, you will see. So where is this? Okay, running. So zip object, names by call. Okay, still this is not working, right? Okay, so like that. Okay, zip object. Unfortunately, it does not give me nice output. Let me see, can I show somehow that output? Names by columns, list. Something is really hanged up with my my debugger, but no worries. So list, names by column, restart it again. Refresh my form, it's posting again values. Now in the console we can see. So this is the 7 post ID, title, body, created, modified, URL slug, and so on. The pairs are matched together. By the way, it would be better to change this names and columns in that way. Okay, so that's good. So we selected all of our data outside. Oh, nice, thank you. List zip, yes, list should be added, you're right. So the list is, by the way, it works also without the list, but probably better with the list. So that is names by column. What else? What kind of hacky way we could do to set these values to the post itself? Because normally the post is, if this is a data class, it means that they should be set by one by one by values. If this is something which is from dataset JSON or something like that, data class JSON, then there is a functions to directly serialize, so from the dictionary to this object structure. So we will get to that, but let's go step by step. So here, the first step would be do this manually. So for this will be key value in zip, like that. And then if key, for example, matches the post ID, then we would, I forgot to actually create post, so post model post. Maybe that would be interesting thing to explore for yourself, is how to do this without without coding it manually. There are multiple ways. So this is one way. So we will set it up manually. Post ID, title. The easiest way to set this is using dictionaries, but let's use it step by step. So body, like that. Okay, so now we filled the post object with actual data from database. There are alternative ways how to do this more simpler. We'll definitely look at step by step. I at least know like 5 to 10 ways how to change this code, either by selecting the specific columns. For example, right now we could as well just select here post ID, title, and body, and then we know already that all 3 of those will be followed like 0 position, 1 position, 2 position. Then we can extract them directly inside of our object, right? Or we could use something like it's written now. So definitely experiment with these things as well. So now I'm making a screenshot of this function and adding to the Jamboard. And now the last thing missing here is using that function for displaying data in the post back form. Remember, I told you that after every post method, we should have redirect to a get method. Otherwise, user can just keep pressing F5 and creating or the refreshing page and creating a lot of records. So you would have, you would get here, not here, but here, the new page. You would say success, everything is fine, user is happy, user refreshes page, and actually creates 2 posts just by refreshing, not touching the submit button at all. So that's why always the redirect. That is that. And here the actual looking at the post. So instead of using dummy post, remember we use the dummy post, we need to use the database, of course, right? So controller database, get post, post ID. That's about it, right? So we're getting the post from database. Now trying to run it and testing it, how it works. So it gets here the debug, sorry, and now it works. So we'll show you in a second. So as a homework, I think I could add maybe another small task, which would be interesting, hopefully. Let me see, so how it actually works all together. Again, this code is so simple. There's nothing happening. There's really few functions. There is really nothing much going on. It's just very carefully going all of those details one by one. You will see that this is very easy. So here, it would be nice to have a function add new post instead of me trying to write here, right? So new post, this will be the title of new post, body of new post, multi-line, save, and here the new post is appearing in this link. So now if I use this link again in different tab, it's always giving me the new post, really nicely working, right? So you already know how to select things. So I think it would be nice to add two small extra things as a homework, which I think from this code which I just gave you should not be too difficult. One thing is, please create in the form that there you would use here the URL slug. So the actual URL will be posts/URL slug, right? So that I think you can do this, right? You need to add this field to the forms page, and you also need to have the controller database to select post not by post ID but by URL slug. Please do not change the existing function but create another function. So that is one thing. Another thing which I like you to create is here the delete button. Delete. So the idea is that if I submit this button, so basically what is inside this button is just a form. Maybe I can quickly write down how it actually would work. Let me see. So this will be the homework. I will explain a little bit more about the delete button. Again, very small 2 things to add, but hopefully it will help you to understand how it actually works. So here in the view, instead of trying to do any hacky stuff, we will use it very simple. So there will be another form which will have some place where to land, right? So the action will be some place where we want to land, and we can even use the other one as an example. Where was the new one, right? So there is the action and method. So we will use not post new, but there will be post delete, right? So you need to create that one, and then you need to create here very simple, just one input, type submit. Oh no, you don't see the code, sorry. Thank you for saying that in the chat. So submit and value delete, right? So this will produce really nice small button here. Let me show you, where was it? Not here, but here. I refresh. Oh no, I don't have the post delete. So if I would have post delete, then it would work. Now let me just use it like that. Refresh. So see, delete button. Again, just using very basic, very simple HTML. So you will have this function created that will receive this request. And of course, you need to somehow also say what to delete, right? So for saying what to delete, please use another field, which will be type hidden. And this will be value set from the post. So post ID. And of course, you need also a name here. So the name will be the post ID. So these hidden fields will be like they would be simple input text boxes, but they will not be visible to the user. So these are very commonly used for HTML forms. So you definitely try out using this and try to create this delete endpoint. So you need actually to create this function in the controller posts to handle those delete requests, right? So that is about it for today. It will be really interesting to see how well you succeed with this task. This is a very simple task. I'm asking you to only create 2 very small functionalities. Please try to do this, and I will send you later the link, the Google form where to submit the results. And we'll see who is the best one till the next week. Again, so the form, the hidden field, the controller to receive the request, then also the function in controller database to delete the post, then also another function to select the post by URL slug instead of ID. So I think any of those things should not be too difficult to do. So that's it for today. Let's meet in 1 week.